Good morning. It is 10:34 a.m. Not too bad. Not okay. 10:35. Pretty close. And it is Sunday morning, and that means it is time for Sunday Club, a weekly Ruby on Rails live stream where each week we take a look at building an application together in Ruby on Rails, and we cover a pretty wide array of stuff associated and to do with all of that fun process. We move pretty slowly because we only build the application a couple of hours a week and tend to go off on long tangents looking at different bits of technology and design and all of that fun stuff. But nonetheless, we're making a little bit of progress. The application that we work on each week is an event registration and ticketing application, so that organizers could kind of put on an event and that people could buy tickets. And the bit that we want to get to eventually is the idea that they would buy tickets in groups and be able to have teams and groups and all of the complicated ways in which that can affect billing and pricing and things like that. There's loads of stuff in the YouTube archive channel for anyone interested in some of the design challenges, the modeling challenges, all of those types of things. There's hours of stuff to go through. And in fact, related to that, it is our the channel's 2-year anniversary, apparently. I'm not sure quite when the first stream was, but YouTube told me that this week the channel has existed for 2 years, and I think I made it like the same week that I started streaming. So thanks to anyone who's like dropped by or dropped me a message or said hello or whatever. My Twitter and LinkedIn and things is in the stream details. I don't really use LinkedIn, so probably not best to go on that one. But feel free to say hey if you want to, and anyone who's dropped past the chat. All right, so let's pick straight back up with follow-up, because for the first time in ages, we actually have some follow-up. Last Sunday, after the stream ended, I carried on doing stuff. And let's go take a look at it. Let's not look at my face anymore. Let's go and find some work. All right, so last week we worked on when you clicked this button. And so this is the idea of organizers saying, hey, I want to take part, I want to organize an event using this software. It's event registration software. I am an event organizer. Let's go. And the first thing we said was we were like, hey, okay, well, tell us about your organization, tell us a bit about you, tell us a bit about whatever we need. And what we did was come up with, in Sketch, some designs for that process. And the ones that we came up with were like this. So I'm going to just fill the screen with this and then zoom right in. And they were this kind of split screen layout for this form. And I really liked it. It reminded me of what Slack used to do with this kind of half and half. So we then built that. And so we had step 1, step 2, step 3. We had some cool things. But we found a couple of quirks around like having this full height image on the left-hand side, like having full height images against kind of unknown height forms, and kind of the pros and cons and trade-offs, like how long would this form get. So I'd done a few bits and bobs with this before, but we got to play around with the CSS Grid API, and we're just learning stuff, which was cool. But then it wasn't working. Like basically that was a decision I made at the end of last Sunday. It was like, it'd be interesting to try some other layouts. So after the stream, very rare for me, 2 years in and never do any homework, decided to take another run at it because I was kind of interested. So I looked at kind of containing that content in a container, a box of some sort. Just use a bit of a drop shadow here to say, hey, instead of having the content top to bottom, unconstrained, unbounded on the page, because that creates issues. What happens if you were to put a bounding box around it? I didn't mind this idea. I still ended up in the same sort of headache of how long this form would get versus how short it would be, and having that trade-off and where the scroll would be. Would this section on the right-hand side here sort of be a scrolling window? Would the whole thing just get longer and longer, and you'd have to find an image that fitted neatly, and all of those things? So again, I was kind of playing around, building that out, had some nice time. This was off stream, so I'd finished last week by the time I got to this part. And then I didn't really like that either. So then I went a step further and was like, right, what I really love, and this is a personal preference, is large images with stuff over the top of them. So then I was like, let's go to something like that. So I then looked at these ones, this idea of having a background image that's sort of like it doesn't have a focal point. There's nothing specific in it. It just is like a cover photo, like a vibe-based photo, which is a technical term, a vibe photo. And so rather than here, where the photo is more like a hero style, you know, like this is important. Look at how bold and bright it is. This transitions to, hey, the photo doesn't really matter. Here's the content, and we're just using the photo in the background as a visual, like we're just breaking the page up for you. And that led me down, I actually wish I had done this on the stream actually, because I didn't know that some of this stuff was in the CSS spec these days, because it used to be a real pain in the ass to do things like this. That you can blur and darken pages in the back, for images in the background in CSS these days. So I built it, and in true Blue Peter style, for anyone who's not in the UK, they won't get that reference. Here is one I made earlier. So this image here in the background is darkened and blurred only via CSS. So the actual image is just the original. Let's pull this all the way over to the right hand side. And we can make this a bit bigger over here. Okay, cool. So I built this out. So it's a background image. So there's the original image on the popping up in that little window. So nice and bright, really big, really bold. I just grabbed it from Unsplash, like whatever. Just you wanted something that kind of had bright colors to search through. So the height of the image was originally 100%. And again, we go back to the issues we had before with the side height image, and I ended up chopping the bottom of chopping that height off by using a CSS calc. So it's 100% minus the variable that represents the site nav height default. So that's this bit here basically. So that is an approach that I think we could have taken with this side-by-side layout, but it didn't solve the other issues of this getting longer and longer as this form got longer, and other issues that I was having. So I sort of wanted to take the image, and that would be if you were building a real application with a real team, that would be a big conversation around like branding and like why is this photo here? The reason this photo's here is because we built it on the stream and it was cool and took 10 minutes. But your design department might not want you to fundamentally change the relationship between an image on the sign-up page and the user, whereas we're not really doing that, so we can do what we want. So I just swapped it out for the background. So I chopped the bottom off. This worked great. So if we take this off, we can see what this looked like. So if we just take this back to 100%, you can see what happens here is that the height of the image is 100% of the container, but the container doesn't include this white bar at the top, which is the nav bar, which is the bit we're going to work on today. So it just chops it off the top, and that's great. Like, oh shit, that doesn't, let me just refresh. That worked great. Come on, come back. There we go, cool. So if you haven't used CSS Calc before, it's great. Like, I don't use it enough because I don't do enough front end stuff, but it's there, and then using it with variables, all really fun. Right, background size cover, that means please fill the space that I have given you cleverly, like know which width and height to use. Background position center, I've just used center arbitrarily because the idea here is that the actual image doesn't have a focal point, so it doesn't really matter, but that might come back to bite you because it depends on how much you blur and how much you darken this image. Position relative, why did I need that? Why do I need that? Oh, because I think the darker layer is actually a specific is an additional element on top. So yeah, I think that needed to be relative because it contains the dark image layout. Display flex to center that, and then the line items that just centers the form in the middle. Okay, great. So that's our what did I call it? Cover background full page layout. So this is great. So this is also a view component. So let's jump over. This was all off stream last week. So this is not stuff I'm covering from last week's stream. This is stuff I did off stream, but it is a view component. Cover background full page layout. So it is this element here, and the view component accepts the URL of the image to put in the background, and everything else it's defined itself. And obviously the content it accepts is the content in this form. So it doesn't accept the white box. That I've made part of the component. It just accepts what to put in it. So next one down, we have cover background, full page layout, dark overlay. So this is one that I found I couldn't do. I couldn't blur this. Sorry, I couldn't make the dark layout. I couldn't make the image in the background darken with this CSS property. But I feel like I should have been able to, reading the CSS specs, but I think I went wrong somewhere. So this is basically a full width and full height element that is a semi-transparent black. So here we can toggle, you can see it getting lighter as I toggle the alpha channel of the black background color. So that's basically full black, and that's full transparent. And everywhere in between, we can then decide how dark we want to make that overlay. And you could even do some cool stuff. I was thinking of like animating that, like as the page loaded, you could have it like fade up or fade down, and you could decide how. I actually went for slightly darker so that the content on the form sort of popped out over the image, but you could have quite a bright experience like being down there. And that's it. It's a fairly dumb element. Other than that, it's just a big black box that's only somewhat black. Right, now where did the blurring come in? I must have missed that on this one here. So that's from CSS as well. The image itself, as you saw, is not blurred. That is on a specific CSS property. But where does it live? I have to go and look at the view component to find that out. It is on this after element. Okay. So let's go and take a look at the CSS for this. So I might have got this wrong, but it worked. I haven't checked it cross browser. So let's go and look at the CSS for this element. So for this view component. So let's make this a bit bigger. So this is the one we looked at earlier. So this is the actual container element that has the background image. Remember, the actual background image URL is set in the view component. Hello in the chat. Thank you for your tutorial videos. That's no problem. Don't stop. Okay, sure. I mean, I'm 2 years in at this point. I feel like never. If we go with CSS framework or vanilla CSS, I heavily used frameworks like Tailwind. Is it better to use a framework or not for most projects? This is in the chat, by the way. I'm just reading out from the chat. Hello, everyone in the chat. Is it better to use a framework or not for most projects? So back in the YouTube archive of this channel, I think it was either on this application or the previous one, we did install Tailwind. So I had to play around with that and kind of liked it. I kept having trouble remembering its API, like remembering all the syntax. And in this one, we're using Primer, but only for which is GitHub's view component library and CSS library. But we're only sort of using a few things from it. Like it does buttons and it does form fields and things like that. So we did discuss some of the trade-offs there. So with frameworks, you get things like accessibility help is a big one. So if there's something in the CSS that you might do or in a view component like that might affect accessibility, a framework might help you there. I can't remember if you search in the archive of this channel for Tailwind, there's a bunch of videos there, and there's like long discussions around people in the chat asking about it. But I don't think there is a better or worse. There are just trade-offs either way. So like if you use a framework, you might be committing to the upgrade cycle of that framework. So if they make a change in a large version number? Are you moving up, or are you going to stay where you are and no longer stay with support with that framework? If they make changes that you don't like or don't want to go ahead with, again, you've still kind of got that overhead, which is fine, totally valid, because they've bought you a lot of productivity in the meantime. Does it give things to you and your team that you might not have? Like if you're not that familiar with CSS, is it easier because they do a lot of the heavy lifting in something like Tailwind, where they'll sort of like group things together for you and give you specific utilities that might do things that you might need to know more about CSS in order to do, like responsive layouts or something like that? They sort of take care of a lot of the sensible defaults, sensible design defaults as well. They give you nice looking things, which is an advantage. And then you then have the overhead of, if you bring new engineers onto a project, they have to learn that framework. They don't, like, their knowledge of another framework or anything else, they might not be able to like just look at your CSS. They actually have to look at Tailwind instead. And so I'm not using a framework on this other than, I guess I'm using Primer, but I'm not using it very much. So you can see in this CSS here, we are just using vanilla CSS top to bottom, I think. And what I'm doing is using the BEM syntax just to kind of give me a way of ensuring that this isn't going to be affected by any overrides in the cascade. So this is the name of the component. So we're using Rails ViewComponents, and then the CSS class is also the name of the component. And then here you can see that we have got an element called dark overlay, and I know that like there's no scenario in which I would generate that same CSS class elsewhere. Of course, the downside to this is that I actually build every CSS class I add affects like my overall global CSS size, but I'm not really worried about that at the moment, which this isn't just a huge application. So loads of fun trade-offs to be made. And this helps me work pretty quickly, and there's not a team of engineers and working on this. Thank you for coming to the chat, though. I appreciate it. That was a bit of a recap of CSS frameworks, or my previous covering of them. So yeah, good luck to people out there making those decisions. There's no right answer. It's all just stuff for your team. Got a duplicate CSS attribute there. All right, so we have got this container here, cover, background, full page layout. That's the one that just makes the whole picture fill the view, right? Great. So then I wanted to use this backdrop filter element, and I wanted to do two things. I wanted to blur the image. So this goes back to my sketch thing here. What I had done here was, I'm on the wrong layout. I had come to this image, wherever it is here. I had gone to blur, and then I had done this, and I was playing with this, and I was like, oh, cool, I think I could do that in CSS. So adding it to the element didn't work. I'm not sure if I've done this right, but adding it to the after pseudo element did work. So if we go to, backdrop filter, I think if we just do that. The backdrop filter property lets you apply graphical effects such as blurring or color shifting to the area behind an element. Because it applies to everything behind the element, to see the effect, you must make the element or its background at least partially transparent. Oh, okay, maybe that's where I was going wrong. You must make the element partially transparent. Oh, maybe that's where I was going wrong. I wonder if I was to do this. So I've made a pseudo element after, which I assume is transparent, and therefore that's why it's working. But what happens if I do opacity 0.99 and then do this one? Like, is it possible to blur that image without having to have the pseudo element? Oh, hello. I think that's totally worked. Oh, no, wait. My server isn't... done the same thing I did last week of forgetting to fire up the right server so that it's not refreshing my CSS. Yeah, that should be the right one. Okay, I don't think that has worked. Okay. So here we now have opacity. We can, we can drop down. Great, so that's going down. So that's not getting lighter, it's getting less opaque. but this is not firing. Okay, cool. That didn't work, so it does need to be on the after. So this is CSS demo backdrop. So backdrop filter blur 10 pixels. Invert and sepia. So what does that actually look like? What is that element? So it's backdrop filter. Oh, there's just nothing. Oh, there's just nothing in it. I see. So that's why the after, because ours is filled with the background image. So you just need an empty div essentially. So if we were, oh no, but this does have background color. 0.2. Okay, so what happens if we try and put this over our dark background? Because this is essentially the same thing. This is this 0.7, this dark thing. Let's actually make that so it's a bit more visible. And try that. Oh, whoops, hang on. Just moved that accidentally. Ah, now that has worked. Okay, so let's check this out. So here, for dark overlay. Aha. Right. Okay, so we don't need the after. We could do it here. Okay, that's cool. So that just saves us a little bit of extra work. And so that's my misunderstanding. It's because I put the background image on this element. I can't make those transparent, but I can do this all in one here. So this is a full, so it's no longer dark overlay, is it? It's now dark blur overlay, I'll call it. And let's go back to our component as well. Just swap that out. Cool. You could even tweak, you could even pass these in as variables to the view component if you wanted. That would be pretty cool. So you could say, can you do how do you do an after in an inline CSS after inline style? I don't think I've ever done that before. That seems weird. That seems... Oh, okay, interesting. Oh, okay, you don't have to do that. You could just set the variable in the style. Okay, that's interesting. You just define different classes in your style sheet. Okay, so you could define the variable that was being used. So this could be in here. You'd probably name this better. Dark blur overlay. Blur level, or like blur size, I guess it would be. And then that could be 6 pixels. What's the syntax for setting these? Like this. And then that would be here. And then you could say, can you use the var just for this final value? So you could do this, cover BG4, blur size, dark opacity. And that could be 0.3. Just make it 0.3 to make it a bit more readable. Can you then do this? But I really haven't used any of this stuff, so var like that. Separate these out to make them a bit more readable. Okay, does that work to start with? Point 3. Okay, great. So then can I come in here and type style equals opacity 1? Yes, I can. So that is really cool because that's how you could then pass that into the view component as a variable. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's really cool. So in here, you could have that style tag exist here. Blah, 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 whatever we've just called it. And then this could be the dark opacity or something like that. And then it would accept the number between 0 and 1. Cool, that's really great. That's great. Okay, so we've improved that. So we don't want that to be... Because you can make this really blurry, so... Can I just like change... the variable, so compatibility. Oh, hello. Okay, so this is a can I use in here, right? Okay, great. So select a prefix needed for 5. Oh, wow. They've basically built can I use into here. How have I just never noticed this? Compatibilities in Safari 15. Oh, oh, great. Okay, let's try that in Safari then. Hang on, I have a Safari window open on my other window. So let's see if this. I haven't checked this cross browser at all. Oh, okay, that totally fucking doesn't work. Okay, you could say on Safari that it's just cool to have the whole image there and then wait for that compatibility issue to get fixed. Can you click on these to find out what the issues are? Like, do they need a prefix? So what's the prefix? No, okay, fine. Browser compatibility. Safari, what's the X? Dash WebKit. Okay, so we can do that. We can do that. We can... do this. Like this. Cool. So there's like a project called Auto Prefixer that you can use that I have used in other projects. I'm not going to sort of go down that road now, but it will look at rules like that of what needs a prefix and what doesn't. And as it builds your CSS, it will add them for you. I don't know how well that works with things like I don't know, all of the many other things in your CSS build pipeline. Ours should now be fairly straightforward because we're not using much at all. So we could do that, but for now we'll just plonk this in here. That's pretty cool. So in here in Safari, does the dark overlay still work? Oh, that's cool. So 2 unused CSS variables. Well, they're 432, so that's all the primer ones. Okay, fine. So in here, we can presumably find the one that... Okay, I didn't mean to open those. We've got one that is the dark overlay here. Great, okay. So but you can sort of see how, like, is 0.7 here going to be the same as 0.7 in Firefox? Like, even that might be affected by... the different browsers might affect how it lays out. All right, cool. So that is where we are up to with that layout. It's cool. I like it. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, yeah, I think you could kind of drop that prefix and just assume that Safari will get there eventually. Like if they're supported with a prefix, I think that generally means they're on the path to supporting it without the prefix. Do they ever just drop it altogether? Don't know. Anyway, let's get rid of Safari because we're not fussed about that right now. right, that's all good. Can we just commit all that? Because that sort of works for me. What have we got in here? Oh shit, we've got loads of stuff. Oh, that's me. I think that's me swapping out for... Oh, okay. Then we added large stuff. Okay. So we added a large variant to... This is also stuff I did off stream last week. So we added a large variant to our form object. So this is now a large text box rather than another one because we already had large in our... Okay, let's do a couple quick commits here. We'll just do them real quick. So just to git status. Yeah, we'll just do those three. So we will... God, how long does this branch possibly get? That needs to be my next bit of homework. Add large modifier for text boxes in forms. There's not a lot to say about that. There's not a lot of context. It's a... Oh, it's actually form control, not text boxes. No, fine. Fuck it. That'll do. All right, so... We then... I think all of these are to do with the full page layout, right? Like everything here is implementing... Just checking through. Everything here is basically one... There's a lot of changes, but they're all in service of... Because even though well, if we were doing this diligently, we would actually go back and obviously repair our Git history to make this make some sense. But this actually isn't... Okay, let's do one where we introduce the component. Because that's at least standalone, because we wouldn't implement it anywhere, so it wouldn't break anything. So let's do that. And that one. So this git commit is the three files that make up the view component for the full page layout. That's the Ruby file, the HTML template file, and the Sass file. And then we also are adding that Sass file to our component Sass file, the one that looks them all up, because we haven't got that automated yet. Let's just commit those. This is add, what did we end up calling it? Cover, oops. Cover background full page overlay component. Yeah, if we actually do rebase this, we might not actually bother committing the previous versions of this. Let's just put on the live stream. We designed and built a previous layout for full page forms that had an image on the right hand side and the page content. This in this initial case, a form on the left. Again, the git commit is sort of why we're making the change rather than what the change contains. When I played with this, didn't like the we were making, and so I wanted to create a version where the image was in the background, blurred and with a dark, blurred and darkened. This commit introduces a component that allows this, that does this, and that's it. That's all we're doing. We're just introducing the component. We're not using it in this commit yet. And then that should all be committed. Wait for VS Code to catch up. And then here, what we've done is basically swap out all the images because we had put ones in that were all like thin strips. And then here we want to actually this one can go in on its own because that could get refactored down. Rebased into the original, because the branch for this is like 1 million commits at this point. So here we've switched the height of the site nav bar to be a variable. I don't know if that's in master yet. So we could actually just switch this, rebase this change all the way back to where that component was introduced. God, I'm gonna have to put a couple of hours aside to rebase all of that stuff. So update site nav. In fact, we're about to get to it in what's it called? Site nav bar to use CSS variable for height. In an upcoming commit, we want to use this value to calculate a full page element. So making this a CSS. This much easier. That's kind of why I'm making that change. So that one can go in. And then these, we're just changing a bunch of images and then swapping out. I mean, these all need to go in at the same time because these images are the ones being introduced here. So let's do, for these are all staged, just did that in the editor here. So swap organization, setup UI to use new cover BG full page layout. I've updated the images here as, again, I don't know if this would stick around in the rebase because if we're not keeping the one that where there are thin stripped on the left hand side, like if that all gets just taken out of the Git history in general, you then don't need the change where you introduce the images as thin strips. You could take out all those commits and jump straight to the point where the images are larger, so you don't need this commit or anything. So I'll write it as if it's staying, but I think actually it could just get rebased out altogether. As these were previously added as narrower versions for a different, I guess it was a vertical layout. The new component works best with landscape images, I'll do. Cool. All right, so we committed everything there, I think. So we're back to our normal branch, which is still called Rails 7. I don't think about it too much. There's 4 million commits that need to be rebased. I keep changing. Like, I have no idea how many there are, but I don't want to look because I'll have to go and do it at some point. All right, let's get to what we actually wanted to get to. Let's get to view component refactoring / merging / whatever. All right, view components. Site nav, navbar component here admin navbar component here. So this was a conversation decision that I had on the stream ages ago, because we built the admin area first and didn't know what the rest of the site was gonna need. So one of the issues that you have there is that when you're signed in or whatever, I have this page here, you have this white bar at the top. So this is going to have in Sketch somewhere, presumably a logo on it. And it's presumably going to have some other stuff, right? Like it's going to have links and whatnot and whatever. When you're in admin area, which I've got here in another tab, then you get this other editor where you get this little menu here. And if I'm a member of more organizations, I can click on this and it will provide a drop down so I can jump between my organizations. So that's all of building all of that is back in the YouTube archives if you want to take a look on this channel. That's great, but we've got two. So it's actually really annoying to be like, okay, well, do we have a way to get from one to the other? And do we keep them as the same component? I'm not describing that very well. Yeah, I sort of want one navigation and I want it to be smart all the time. Now, there are a couple of different approaches we could take here. We could say that keep these as the containers and then pass in the appropriate components to what they need. I think we already had a couple of examples of that, right? Like we have, yes, we have the navbar component and then we have the navbar item component. And then these themselves have different bits. So this thing here, this little orange blob is a component itself. Great. But when I then go back to my user area, so if I'm signed in and go to here, I want to open another one in that container. What's it called? It's called Club Admin Events. So here I have this little toggle. But here I don't, because I'm not in the admin area. But I should do. Like I should be able to have that everywhere I am as an admin. Like the header should stay the same if I'm an admin. One of the downsides is that this events and orders will be different if I'm in my admin area or if I'm signed into as an admin versus if I'm just a normal person. But we need to figure that out. We need to make one. I think I've changed my mind on having two, and I think we want one view component that just makes the decisions based on what happens. And an example of that is here at the end of this process. I think you can go here even if you're already signed in, right? And I'm going to come back to what these little colored bars are across the top of my tabs in a second because they're pretty cool. Right, so I'm signed in here as T, I think it's test user or whatever it is. And this would be your avatar photo, whatever it would be. It just looks super rough. We haven't styled it. But I can still, like, I might be adding a new organization, right? And I want it to appear in my new list. So at what point would that happen? So I just want one nav bar to rule them all. A quick note on what I'm doing here. So this tab over here in Firefox on the left, I'm not signed in. And you can see I've got sign up and sign in. I'm just a non-signed in user. But in the same browser, in a different tab, I am signed in. I'm signed as an admin. And I've been doing this with the multi-account containers add-on in Firefox, and it's really good. If you're using this is super helpful. I've got a few of these for testing stuff at work. I've started using them like just in my day-to-day life for like having anything that you want siloed out. So you are anything when you start a new tab. So if you hold and press on the new tab button, you get a list of your containers, and you can make these new containers here. So you can say like manage containers, make a new container, and it's like an entire browser session in one container, but you never leave this actual instance of the browser. So you might have one that's got like your Amazon account signed in, but you don't want to be signed in on all your other ones. And then you can see that you can assign them a color, and each tab across the top turns that color. So pretty helpful. I found that really helpful to be like having tabs where you're an admin, tabs where you're signed out, tabs where you're everything, rather than having to use private windows or different browsers. You can just do everything in the same session, and it's pretty helpful. So that's how I am doing that here. All right, so we want to merge one header to rule them all, one navbar, sorry, to rule them all, but we have 2 components at the moment. So we need to make sure that we merge these. Let's merge the admin one to the site nav one and just call it site nav. And maybe I'm making the wrong decision. Maybe this is going to turn out to be a bad idea, but we're going to know. We're going to see if we can do it, and we'll find out ourselves. So I think, do we have some specs around these? Yes, we have one for the account navbar item and one for the full site navbar. Okay, so I do remember doing these. These are some very like, okay, this is what we've got. We'll have to go with this tests. This is fine though. Okay, so what's the difference? One is admin navbar and one is site nav navbar, and we're going to move everything to site nav navbar. We're not going to have the concept of a specific component within admin. Yeah, that's yes. Okay, maybe the individual components stay here, so maybe we don't move this one yet. But let's find out. Okay, so what does this take? This takes a user and current organization. Okay, so the idea for an admin navbar is that in order to see it, you must be signed in as an admin, and therefore you must have a current organization. Those are 2 rules that are sort of, we just coded in. Great. However, the generic navbar won't know whether a current organization is required or not. Here we're saying, I think, do we expect this to exist every time? We must do. I don't know if there's any. I don't know if it would fail if we passed in nil. And that would actually be a good thing to have as a test. And we don't have any tests for that. Okay, well, that would have been a handy thing to have as a test, perhaps. But whatever. All right, so with a user, includes capitalized first character of the email address. So we expect... Do we expect the generic navbar to have a little blob? We're not testing the actual styling of it or what it looks like. We're just saying it should have that in it. When no user is passed in, it does not display email. Why would it have the whole email address? Does it show the whole, like... Because that's a not, so that's a pretty rough... I think I remember saying that's fairly rough. Run a component deprecated was getting a deprecation if so maybe. Okay, so... Does it normally... what does it actually do? What's in the site nav? So that test would never fail. I think I remember writing this and saying on the thing at the time. Like, wouldn't this be better? I mean, not great, but like, wouldn't... What? There must be some mechanism where it has the email address in. Edit user email address path. Like you would be better doing do not have link to. Yeah, this test is broken. I remember that being broken at some. I think that was just a streaming thing. I think I was just rushed at the end and being like, hey, you should have a tester that does something. I'm just going to chuck something in. So apologies for that. It's really annoying doing stuff on the stream because we just don't do any planning or diligence on it when it really throws me under the bus in later streams. All right, fine. So this is irrelevant. So we can fix that. Okay, fine. So let's fix that. But this is relevant. Okay, so we do chop the first character off and we do show it as a capital letter. Great. Okay. And what we want to do on the admin one is we want to say, take the user, take the current organization, and what does it do with those things? Sort of want to keep, I think like this menu here is the one. So account nav bar item component. This is the one that shows that toggle. This toggle, whoops, wrong one. This toggle here. So I think we want that all the time. But that toggle can live in the admin area, I think. Whether you want to group all the navbar items, I'm not sure. But what we could say is, like, that's it. That's all the admin one does. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't show you. Okay, so let's lift admin number. Let's lift this out. Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's start with our test. What are we actually doing? So with a user includes the first character email address. We think that would show every time. So what we then want is when the user has organization membership. So organization memberships is what we're taking as like, hey, I can do stuff within a given organization. Like I'm a member of that organization. So what we're going to do here is say, that is just making double there. I think we could do the same thing. So we could say, let organization we might actually have to start building that out with a factory, but let's see how we get on. So we can say when the organization memberships be like, I don't know what that needs to contain, but let's just put that in there for now. And then we can say what should happen? Something should happen, right? It should include, what do you call it? It should render the called. I'm really feeling my way here. I can't remember any of this stuff. The admin account navbar item. Don't know if this is a good idea at all. Let's just keep going, keep going. We'll back up and work out whether we like what we've done afterwards, I guess. Wait, which one am I doing? This one. can I just check that that's been called? So expect to have received new, like no idea if I'm doing the right thing here. Let's see if this test even runs. Let's do it in this thing over here. So we can do bundle. Don't know what this test is called. Copy. And then we want line 22 for now. Zero is full of typos or whatever. Oh, I missed aspect, sorry. All right, so any typos or anything? Okay, great. So expected to receive new, but that object to not aspire. Okay, great. So is that all I need to do there? Do I have to actually mock the return value? Okay. So let's fake that passing. So if we just copy and paste this over. This one. The trouble with these not all being named the same is that it's not useful. So let's do this. Close this one. Go to the generic one. Because we want that, we're going to make that component go away altogether, right? So out of the admin one and into the generic one here. I'm going to say if it has a user, we're just going to plonk this here. We've got user organizations that will be stubbed. Current organization will be nil, but we can just make that Z for now to make the other button pass. And that we know that that one will work. Okay, so this is not correct because we're just faking that value, but let's see if this does anything at all. Might have totally got the wrong end of the stick here. It's Sunday morning. Organization receives unexpected message organizations with no arcs. Okay. Can't remember what I have just... Oh, okay. To receive organizations. Oh, okay. So it's organizations, not organization memberships. Okay. I think that's fine. Good morning in the chat. Okay, let's see what's happening now. Nil is not an active model compatible object. What? Which one is nil? Oh, because I'm not actually return. Oh, can I just do and yield? I don't know if that's going to work or not. Oh, does it not yield itself? Oh, is it like an return original? I can't remember any of this syntax off the top of my head. And return original, I've just made that up, I think. I did make it up. I did just make that up. Because am I actually testing that received new, or am I testing that render received this type of class? Because this could just be like anything, right? So this could just be like this could just be a double of whatever, I think. Like, where does render come from? And return double. Does that need to do anything? I don't know. Right, let's see what happens there. So when you actually get to render in line, we're actually just passing this double to render, but I don't know if that matters for the test. Really haven't used this enough to know anything about what's going on. Just checking the errors we're getting. Double is not an active model compatible object. It must implement to partial paths. So can I just do this? Just making stuff up now. Oh, okay. So instead of doing that, can we do... What are we actually testing here? We're testing that whether this gets rendered out. So should we actually be testing the rendered output of this? But this is not the object under test. This component is. This one can have its own tests, and we assume that as long as that component is doing the right thing, all we're caring about in this component is whether we called the other component, right? Like, if you're 3 layers deep, the test for this highest level component isn't reproducing the test of this nested one. Or do you treat it like a feature spec and just do everything at that high level, which doesn't make any sense at all, because the whole point is that you only test the individual component. Okay, I think I wanted to... I should really have read up about this. I think I want to test whether this is getting called with this. And I guess testing whether new gets called is a proxy for that, because we're always calling... Is there any scenario where people... By people I mean me, do like thing equals this and then do render thing? Because what does that get you? You can then... Like, is there any scenario in which you would want to modify the view component in the view before you pass it to render? Presumably, maybe? No? Yes? No idea. I wish I was using these, like, I always use the phrase like in anger, but I don't mean like in anger, like in production, like in the real world, because then I feel like I would bump into all of these things really quickly. Whereas because I only use it on Sunday mornings, I forget sort of what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's go and do a quick Google around. So let's take a look at like Rails view component testing, like testing nested. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm searching for. I'm just going to skim around. If anyone... You got subhead component. Are you going to show me tests for this, which might be... Okay, yeah. That's always where you end up with when you're doing these things, isn't it? We can all pretend we're doing important work, but in the end, you're just always writing a shitload of logic about which CSS classes to show on a page. You always end up back there. This is all okay. Great. This is all just like how to do stuff. I'm sort of looking for the isolation around testing specifically. Maybe this. But maybe I think maybe I'm just asking the wrong question. Okay, well we know that calling new does fail. Oops. Sorry, does like the test works. Like if we do allow, is this is this receiving render? What is the what is this? So does this get called? So like allow. Described class to receive render? Because could I do like expect described class to receive render with this and check whether that happened? Let's just see if it fails at even that simple allow. Navbar component does not implement render. Oh, okay, but I put it as a class method, right? Dot new. Right, okay, so it's an that does work. But render in line is the thing that's creating the instance for me. You can Rails view component spec render in line. Oh, is this going to answer all my questions? Be like, hey, read the docs as usual. Dum dum. Unit test components use render in line. New assert selector. So this is testing the output again, or just assert the text. Kappa bar matches are available. Assert selector only matches visible elements. Previews as test cases. So again, that's testing the output, not whether the component is calling other components. Maybe I'm doing that wrong. This is all the set text. Okay, so that's all great, but it's not doing what I'm doing. But maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Okay. So let's take that out and just use new as a proxy for that. So what were we doing? We were saying, in that case, what's the aspect for like and return original? And call original. Okay, that's what I was looking for. I was close. I don't know if that's going to do what we want. Oh, okay, great. So actually that is then... But it is still trying to render out. And in fact, I don't want it to call the original. So if I... What was the error I got before? What was the error I got before? Forgotten already. Right, because then it's render there. Render inline isn't like available to me anywhere, is it? No. Oh wait, but here's my instance. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. Okay, so I was like, oh, how is this generating an instance? But it's literally happening like in the thing we're passing. Okay, so I don't want to think about wording right now. So let thing do that. God damn it, macOS. So let thing do that, and then render inline thing. Right, we'll come back to this in a second. So the thing is the thing under test, like it's this component. It's an instance of this component. So here we could say allow thing to receive render, right? Oh, to like we could even say here, let me try this. So you could even then test what was happening to this one. So this one could be account navbar item. I think I'm way off the beaten path with this, but so this could be, and that could then just be the double that you pass back, right? So and then return this, and that should be the thing with that. Oh, I've forgotten what it actually takes. I think it just takes that. Yeah. Does that pass in any way? I've lost all sense of where I am and what's happening. No, okay, good. I feel like that shouldn't have passed. I didn't deserve that. Right, yeah, I think I've gone down like mocking. Site navbar component. So render avatar icon component new. How is it getting set? But isn't that within avatar icon component? Oh, here. Oh, of course. So the test is actually failing properly. It shouldn't get both of those things. Okay. I just haven't finished the test. Okay, so if user, we're currently just saying if user do both. So this is saying we're just stubbing out all renders. Is that a good idea? That doesn't feel good. So in here, this would then swap out. So it would be like expect. I mean, this would be subject, right? This could be the instance of the class, of the component class. To have received render with count navbar item. And it won't complain about the other one? Okay, the test passes, but I've lost all sense of what we're testing and why and what's happened. So let's right. We now have something that's gone green, so something is happening. All right, let's wind our way back. What are we actually doing here? Right. The code is incorrect because I just wanted to try and see how we were going to test this. Fine. So in reality, oh, maybe we do want these both to appear at the same time, actually. And this is okay. So these are two other view components. So let's just clarify what these are doing. So this first one, avatar icon component, is like, well, you're a user and you're we're going to show an avatar to represent you. So an avatar icon component. And at the moment, it just shows the first letter of their email address and against a background color. Fine. So that one can always appear because if you're signed in. Okay, great. Okay, so that one can actually live there. The other one is if you are an administrator of organizations, which is like our other model that we care about. And by that, we mean you have organization memberships. Then this one should also appear. So there's a conditional missing here, which is... okay, there's a conditional missing here, which is like if user organizations.any or something like that. But that sort of comes to another interesting question around view components, which is whereabouts should the logic live as to whether this renders any content? Like, should we call this every time? And this just knows that if this is an empty, if user.organizations is nil or is an empty array or whatever, don't render anything. Or is it up to this component, the parent component, not to call the other one unless the circumstances are met? And maybe this one should raise if there are no user organizations. Like, presumably that's a design choice for the authors of the components. I don't know. There was like a best practice thing on the view components. I remember I've done this several times where I have asked questions and then it's like, oh, there is actually genuinely something in the docs to help you. You just keep forgetting that it exists. Architectural decisions. How-to guide. It's called like, here's some, it's got like a name. I can't remember what it is, but there's like a cool doc somewhere that's like, hey, these are some things you should consider. How various projects use ViewComponent. Oh, I got to look through some of these. So these are all... Shatter, that sounds like something that a lot of people would use. Oh, these are just forks. Right, okay. So these could be... Yeah, okay, this is just random stuff that's using... Okay, fine. Look like one component, that's not helpful. Okay, fine. Fine, just close that down. We can just do our own thing. Okay, so we are going to define that we just shouldn't call it. That's what we're going to test for. Whether that the parent component should know whether or not to call the relevant subcomponent. I don't know what they called. Whether it should know not to call it. And rather than testing the output, rendered output, to check that it doesn't include what that component would render, it's just going to say, did you call it or not? Because if we check what the output renders, if we check what the component renders in our output, the implementation of that component could change and this test would fail. But we don't care. Like, we trust that component, right? To do what it's going to do. I guess that would be the only point at which we would need to test the output, is if this component needed guarantees of the exact output of it, which we don't. We want it to do its own thing, I think. So fine. So let's go back to where we started. So context with a user, we're just creating a double that has an email address. We're passing that user into an instance of this navbar component, and we are saying we expect to see a capital Z within our component. Great. So that covers this. Now this doesn't check that it's within a link, which I'm guessing I skipped for time. But fine, let's just leave that for now. When the user has organization memberships, let's tidy this up. So when the user has organization memberships, that means we want to have organizations, and this can just be org1. We're just going to make an array here. And we're going to allow a user to receive organizations and return this array. We could use factory bot and build a real one with organizations, but we don't care, I think, at the moment about that, and this will be more performant. The issue would be is that if we swapped out the array on the user, swapped out organizations method on the user, we'd have to come back and fix this test. So this... But this is in the test. This is in the component as well. So it actually says here that this is going to be... it's not that one. I keep going to the wrong one. It is user.organization. So we really are tying those together there. Okay. Okay. So could this just be subject? Yes, and that could actually be consistent, because that's the same. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I see that I see this pattern and I've used it. Because subject is implicit, right? Like you can do, I think you can just do that. I can never remember. Implicitly defined subject. And the first argument of, if the first argument to an example group is a class, an instance of that class is exposed to each example in that example group by the subject method. So, explicit subject. Yeah, you can just do subject like that. But I think it's the same thing. We recommend using the named helper method over subject to example. Using subject in the group scope to explicitly define the value that is returned by the subject method in the example scope. Note that while the examples below demonstrate how the subject helper can be used as a user-facing concept, we recommend you reserve it for support of custom matches or extension libraries. Oh, okay. A named subject improves on the explicit subject by assigning it a contextually semantic name. Since a named subject is an explicit subject, it still defines the value that is returned by the subject method in the example scope. I find the aspect documentation like the language is not very accessible to me. I get that it's totally correct and I have a huge understanding of why it's like this way, but my brain can't process it very well. It defines an additional helper method with the provided name. The helper method is memoized. The value is cached across multiple calls in the same example, but not across examples. I recommend using the named helper method over subject in examples. So when they say named on, they mean make your own, right? I'm not sure what the we recommend part. Named subject improves on the explicit subject by deciding it. Okay, so named subject. Oh, okay, named like this. While a global variable is using examples below, this behavior is strongly. Okay. I feel like I'm going down a real rabbit hole there, so let's just do... Let's just do that. Fuck it. No, because... Yeah, fine, whatever. I've got time. That can then go, because we've already got that further up. And how did this have user? Where is this getting user from? Oh, because we're still in here. Okay, so that's fine. So we're still inside this user. Great. So allow users to receive organization, return organizations. Right, so allow, this is allow navbar. To receive render. So within this, we actually don't care. Like this one will have tested the output, so that's doing the right thing. Here, we're no longer testing the output. This test explicitly, we're just testing that we called this, instantiated that, sorry, and then we don't really, do we want to test that it got the right things? Maybe, because that is the responsibility of this part. Okay, so maybe this is actually to receive new with. So let's bump that one up. So what we actually want to test is that these arguments came in correctly. So that is these three. And we're really tying our test there to these things, but this is sort of what we should be doing, I think. So user avatar character should be is user email first uppercase. So are we testing? Are we testing that this came back as Z? Because this is called... Because here we're testing that because it gets rendered. So we're testing it in the HTML, we're testing the output of this, which I'm still not sure whether we should be doing that or not. The current organization avatar character. So what was that before we changed it? It was current organization. Right, which we don't yet have. Okay, great. So we're totally just bypassing that. So that is just Z. So we can leave that as a first implementation. Just say that's broken. And then here we can do user organizations, and this can be organizations. We actually don't really care what that is. So now we're testing not only that this was... You can only get to this double if you call this class with these arguments, and that's how we'll end up with this double. And so this test will fail if any of these arguments are incorrect or different from what we think they will be. And we are tying them to the output of those values because we think, because that could be user email first uppercase, right? Like that would allow you to change this arbitrarily and it wouldn't matter. Like all you're testing is that you're testing it with that. And here we're testing that that actually contains that. So so this could actually be, rather than at user, like that could be there. We actually don't care what that letter is. It would change it if we change this email address in the test. Would we expect this test to fail? No. Okay, fine. So does this test still pass? I might be way off with all of this. Thing. Still got thing. So this is now navbar. And this is now navbar. Okay, cool. So what have we actually done? Like, I've talked a lot and made a lot of noise. We've added a component. All right, fine. And we have added a test to see where that component gets called. Okay, so that is not helpful because we can't, well, actually want to, they're both inside that conditional, right? They're both inside if user. So let's go down to the bottom of this. I'm going to come back to current organization, which we need. But what we can do here is we would expect when there is no user, this test we know is wrong. But what we can also say is it does not render account navbar item. And here we can do, oh, that can go, right? So that can now be navbar. Because that's just doing the same thing. And then this. Can we just do... that? I think we probably have to put this, the markup further. Oh, I'm still at line 22. All the others failed now. I've only been doing the same test. Yeah, we've got 2 other failures. Okay. So this... do we have to put down... again, not sure where that should live. I've had 1 failure. Okay, so now I've only got 1 failure. You site navbar component with a user and includes capitalized first letter of email address. Received unexpected message organizations with. Okay, so we could move, because that is gonna we sort of want to put our conditional around here, right? Because this should be... and then I think that test shouldn't fail anymore. Is that right? No, still fails. Cool. Okay, so we can do, okay, so let's just do, and that can just be an empty array. And then we can bring this further up. Cool. So we basically are saying, well, we've only got a double for the user. We could actually... we could actually add organizations here onto the double, but because we're going to mock it out later on anyway, I've just put organizations here as a let, and then put a mock here, which is like allow the user to receive organizations and return organizations. So that's the method name, and that's the let that we've just made there. And then down here in this context, we actually assign a value to organization. So when it then passes through here, we'll return an array. So it will then know to it will then hit this conditional and say, yep, there's something in there. And so I know to render. So then when it comes down here, it doesn't get there, but this should also happen here. So with a user, it includes and it does not render the account nav bar item. Account nav bar item. I've got to change the wording on these, but I'm not really sure what that is. So we want to test the other side of that conditional. We want to say, okay, so we do have a user, but the user doesn't have any organizations. We can actually put that in here more explicitly. Which I don't think we need to, because it's sort of there already. Like organizations is blank. It does this. It does not do this. And it's failed. Oh, we can lift. Right, okay, so that might allow us to lift this stub all the way to the top and save us a couple of lines. This one here. Because we're just everywhere testing whether that ever gets called. And again, if this list got too long of ones we were testing, you'd probably say that you needed to break this down further. I don't know whether this is, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Okay, so let's start to collapse this down a bit. Let's go actually another line down. Right. So we have a site nav bar. We're trying to get rid of the admin one altogether. Maybe. Before everything, we're saying, all right, we're gonna have the account nav bar item component. We're gonna stop that. So if we have a user, we are gonna, and by with a user we mean we're passing a user to the navbar component. Then we're saying there is a user, it doesn't have any organizations, or the organizations returns an empty collection. So then we're just mocking out the organizations method. It includes the capitalized first character email address. I think this test is wrong, because I think this test is specifying the output of this component, and that is not what is being controlled by what's under test here. I think what we should be testing is whether this link exists and whether we call this component, which we should do with these arguments. So I think we actually want to swap this test out to be very similar to this one down here, but we'll come back to this. So that's the wrong, I think that's not right, but maybe I'm wrong. We then want to check that because we don't have any organizations, it does not render the account navbar item. Again, the naming here is probably not ideal, but whatever. Account navbar items. It's the account one because it shows you. Maybe it should be the organization navbar item. Oh, fuck it, we can rename it later. This naming is all over the place. We just didn't plan this out. It's just happened on multiple streams. Anyway, It's called that for now. We can come back to it. So we're testing that by checking whether the object ever received new. So the idea here being that we never got to this, let alone attempted to pass it to render. I think that's okay, maybe. When the user has organization memberships, which is a proxy for we want to show the list in the account navbar item of multiple organizations. We mock that here. We then create a double that represents that component. Navbar to receive render. Oh, no, that mocks a render altogether. I'm not sure if that's a good idea, but whatever. But that got us around having to pass a double to render. We just said, check what we ever passed to render. Fine, whatever. Allow this account navbar item component to receive new with, and here is where we then specify the arguments that account navbar item component should have. And this is what is controlled in the code that we're going to test here with of what we pass to this thing. So we think that because we've got organizations, we should be within this conditional. We then generate these params. We're not testing the output of what that thing should do. We're just relying on it to do its correct thing. I think maybe that's fine. No idea. If it wasn't, I think we would have to test its output. So we're testing that the params are what we think they are. Returning this let. It's just a double. We don't actually care what it is. It's just representative. Call render. And then we expect it to have received that. So that means that you have got an organization and the component has generated the arguments correctly. Cool. When there is no user passed in, don't display the email. Again, I think that test is incorrect. I think it should be don't call that thing that renders out the name. This was wrong to start with anyway. Come back and do that in a second. And does not render the account navbar item. So this one doesn't ever get to generate an instance of this class because it shouldn't have hit this conditional, let alone this one. Cool. I think that it makes some sense. Right. So we've got two tasks that we want to accomplish. We want to fix the tests for this or update the tests for this and get this argument working correctly. In order to get this argument working correctly, the correct value is that where we got this from, the component we took this from, accepted another argument. It accepted current organization. And yeah, this is an interesting one because the way that has been able to work is because when you're in the admin area, you always have a current organization because it comes from the slug. So you're in slash, we can actually see this in the path here. You're in slash slug slash admin. So we always know the organization you're in. If you then move out of that and just go to edit your account, what should show for the organization picker? The answer is something, and you should then just be able to pick from, like, something should show, and then there's a list of your organizations. So the answer is that current organization can be nil. And in that case, it is up to this to modify this component to handle that scenario, which I assume it doesn't at the moment. What do I want to do here? I want to look at the HTML, I guess. What does it do with current organization? It's just using the character. Okay, well, that's good. That's actually really good because that's... But it accepts user avatar character as well? Oh, no, it's the child one. Okay, it's this one. Fuck's sake, they're all called the same thing. Yeah, so it's just this one that it's generating. Oh, but this one has the user character one as well. Right, that's why it's called a count navbar item. Right. Okay, so we're sort of... fucking hell. It's so stupid doing this on the stream because you just have no reference to what you've done previously. So that we have two versions of this somewhere in here, components. No, I call add events index. Oh, here, okay, up here. So it's this one here. It is the idea that one of these symbols could be the user avatar and the other one could be the organization avatar. And then you could... Ooh, that's actually a really good shout. You could then... Right, so you could then know whether there was a current organization. Okay, that's actually pretty smart. So you could lose this one altogether and this one could be combined. That is actually pretty smart. Okay. Do I want to go that far? What time is it? So rather than having, at the moment, this is one component which just shows the user's, the first character of the user's email address. This one shows that and the organization. And when you click on it, you get the toggle. But this toggle could be like, go to my, change my preferences, change my settings, go to one of my organizations. Which I really like the idea of because it's like one menu to bind them all. Yeah, I do really like that actually, because then we could get rid of this one and just have this one do everything. Account navbar item component. So this one is only passing in current organization avatar character. And so where did we pass it? Current organization. So we passed it current organization. And in here we ended up not using that and only using current organization name first uppercase. So in here, you could sort of change. What happens if you just take that out altogether for this one? Does it do the right thing? Sorry, I'm not narrating very well, but I'm sort of debating how far ahead. So if we have this avatar icon disappear, it does not do the right thing. It expects it to exist. And what's broken there? Right, they're laid out together, so we'd have to do a bunch of work to know whether to show one or the other. I don't think I ever really see this a lot. There must be a reason for that. Do we sort of always want these to be two different things like this, where there's like one that represents the user and actually instead of... Yeah, maybe there's a reason you never combine them. Because the other option is then to change it so that you then don't show the user avatar at all here, and you actually have two separate menu items for them all the time. What I was trying to do was save space on the mobile layout, right? Like this you want to be an organizational picker, but also like get me to my my home settings and stuff like that. Because otherwise here you'd have to have one for the user, one for the organization, and then decide what to show and hide on mobile, whereas this could just be one toggle and then put everything in the drop-down menu that appeared. Yeah, okay. That's probably a fun design meeting to have. There's probably more good solutions to that. Hidden. What we could do here is just pull. What happens if you do the other thing and go the other way around and just remove the user? So we just have this one goes away. Oh, wait, what? Right, that actually does make life easier. And then we could put the T next to it. So you could have this one would still be your toggle, your organizations. Okay, so that does make life slightly easier. Let's just give that a try really quickly. That's this one here. User avatar icon. Oh no, it still missed something off the CSS. Oh, and this one. And I'm assuming this one actually might not need any of this. Yeah, so that ends up there, and then in here. So that can then get renamed as like the organizational toggle. And in so you then sort of don't need this. Because that's gone away. I don't know if any of this is good. Sorry, I'm sort of just playing around here just to see. Because that's no longer being called, so I don't think that'll complain. I did miss it out of the initialize on the view, however. Which is in... Oh, can I open that file? So that's the navbar component going through there. So in the navbar component here, then don't need that one. Okay, so that just gets me back to my S here. So I now have the same problem, but on this one. My test will now fail. Right, okay, so I now have two separate blobs and two separate components. One is the toggle for my organizations. Why is it now on the right-hand side? What CSS did I lose along the way? Oh, there must be something in here that's doing that, right? Yeah, okay, there's something in there that's doing the work. I just haven't done here. So what's this one doing? They are display flex end, but is this one just taking up the entire... So that's flex end. This is the first one. This is the second one, and this is display flex. But could this be flex? I sort of don't want it to fill. Oh, because it has children, right? That fill. That causing it to contain all the additional space. Yeah, this thing maybe. Okay. So it is flex end, but the width of this one is. Actually, what is width auto? 540. Admin account navbar, right? Ah, so it's actually set as 100%. But it needs to be 100% for its children. And it needs to have... So presumably the other one had some container. This is the problem with transposing this over. So again, we're moving from, got one that exists here. And we're moving this one here, this child, to now be rendered within this one. So there's obviously something in here where we constrain that. I'm assuming. Admin navbar content item. What do we have in here? Admin content item? Oh, nothing. We're just throwing it in. Okay, so we probably want something like site nav navbar. Oh, and okay, so we can actually take a lot because the admin one was the one that had all the stuff done. So in here we can say this can all come over, right? That can all come to live in our proper one. So we didn't set display flex on the other one. So we've got these two CSS files that we're working with. This is the old one. It was the one that we're moving from. And then this one which we're moving to. So this one then had a content container. What was the content container doing? Okay. We're making them a list item for some reason that I can't remember. As opposed to a nav? Oh no, it's all within a nav. Do we want to just transpose this over? Sort of as was? Like this one just has nothing in it. It has nav, site nav, nav bar. And then sort of nothing else. Okay, so let's just take what we had from the other one. So let's just have the idea of a content container. Oh, we want to change the prefix. So everything, I think, whoops. So everything here lives within inside that. And then we want to take the CSS of it over. I'm just going to do this class by class and element by element. So in here, we're going to do this and swap out this. Now, this is sort of an argument for the utility-based frameworks. Tailwind and stuff like that, because we wouldn't have to be doing this if the CSS classes defined were agnostic of like the BEM syntax. We could just copy and paste them over. Like we wouldn't care about what the CSS attached to each element was. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Someone asked in the chat earlier about like CSS frameworks. Hello in the chat. Heroku is still awesome for 12-factor apps. Yeah, that's I don't know if that's related to the stream recently where we looked at different hosting providers, but yeah, we were looking at Heroku and Heroku alternatives. Scalingo was the one we ended up looking at. And I agree. I think I ended up on the fact that if you've got, something worth hosting, Heroku gives you a lot out of the box. Okay, so we've done the content container. Let's take this one as well. So this is just the logo-y one, but we didn't ever actually put a logo in because we haven't got one. But let's just lift this one wholesale to the new thing. So that can go straight in there. Cool. And then again, we'll do the same thing and grab the CSS out for it and change the prefix. So that's logo. Because just kind of strip these out as we go, can we? We'll leave them here. We'll just have to try to remember which one we're in. So in here, again, change the prefix. The stream title didn't get updated. Ah, man. That's frustrating. I've switched to using Streamlabs for doing that rather than YouTube, but I will... that's super frustrating. So... I came to hear about Heroku. Oh, sorry in the chat. I apologize for that. That's I'm going to blame Streamlabs for that, but that's my fault. It's because I'm not really a Twitch. I don't check it every time, whereas I leave the YouTube thing open. There is a stream from a week, 2 weeks ago. At least we were looking at stuff like that. So we did 2 streams. We did one where we looked at alternatives. And then on the second one, we got the site up and running. So we got it running on Scalingo in one stream. And then we got it in Heroku the following week. And there's also a previous stream from like a year and a half ago where we got our old app up on Heroku. But they're all good. If you've got like just a small to medium sized app, the pricing was all fairly similar. It was sort of like you could choose your vendor. I think if you're looking for that free to very cheap cost point, then you really were trying to shop around a little bit. But to be honest, that's sort of a different ball game to if you have any money to host your site. Yeah, this is renaming these CSS classes is sort of like, I don't think I want to reconsider that Tailwind or those other kind of utility library decisions. But this is an example of where it is you really have tied your CSS to the view component. But I don't know if that's a bad thing. Let's go back up through here. So we then had the logo. So this one. Right, so this one I'm just going to ignore altogether. So this is actually putting links in our nav bar, which we haven't gotten around to. Whereas the content item is the one that we care about today. And I think we have 2 content items in our new thing. We have this one. Oops. And I think we have this one. And hopefully the CSS will do its thing. Oh, and we have these as well. Okay, so we've got loads actually. But I don't know how robust the CSS to power these was. I don't remember checking it. Can we put like the word logo there just so we can actually see something get rendered out? Right. And we've got content item. Did I already move that CSS over for content item? I think I just left it blank, did I? I must have ditched it. Okay, let's move that one over as well. So primary link, that's gone. content item, that's this one. Here, and we want to again change our block name to the name of the view component. So something should happen when I refresh this page. Cool. It's still totes broken, but it's now broken in a different way. So that's cool. And actually, I'm not sure this was ever working because we didn't have a logo image there. So maybe it was always broken and we just weren't paying attention. So here we have site nav bar. It's okay, cool. So I think that flex end can go now because that was just, I don't even think we need that to be flex. Because everything is in the content container now, right? So should this not be width 100%? Oops. Oh, here we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so this is now our content container, which I think should be 100% of the thing contains it. Okay, so now we have these. This is a UL. So this is, and but these are all flex grow. Okay, so that's toggling a menu that now can't display, so that's fun. Okay, but this is all good. So this, clicking on this should take us, well, it takes us to the page we're already on. Fine. And let's put a link around the logo, right? So let's say here we want this to be yeah, let's use link to in case we change it. So link to, I can't remember what it's called. Is it called like homepage? I have no idea. Static homepage. Do we have? Okay, we only have root because I obviously didn't give it anything else. Oops. Ruth path. Okay, so clicking here takes you to the home page. Clicking this doodad takes you to a user page, and clicking this bad boy toggles your list of organizations. However, I have broken that by changing its CSS properties and not bringing over the stuff that it presumably needed to do from here. Now, what is happening there? Because I've probably broken it. It was inside a content item. Content container. I think most of that stuff's come over. So what does this thing then expect? Width height 100, display flex admin account navbar item. I'm assuming that's what's coming through. Oh, hang on, let me what's actually happening here. So there's this UL here which is hidden. That's our toggle. Okay, great. Is the issue that this just isn't position relative? No? Okay. This is now visible. Where is it? So I just put a big red box around it. It's nowhere. So I'm assuming it's off screen by that dotted line. Okay. Oh, is it that this needs to be position relative? Yes. Okay, cool. And that is because this is position absolute, but it's not inside this thing. It's inside the one above it. And that is admin account navbar item. Where is that? So if this is position relative. Okay, hang on, bear with it. Did I just totally break that? No, okay, that was just a thing. Okay, so there's my little toggle menu, and then if I go narrow enough, there was CSS somewhere that made this go full width no matter what. Was it that we've removed another position relative? Hang on, I need to check what was actually happening in here. And this goes back to an issue that we might face with view components as well, which is like when they're nested and you need to have things like CSS positioning and stuff like that, like within them. So it needs like a child component needs some parent or some component that includes it 2 levels higher to be position relative. That's a real dependency. Like, do you make sure they're namespaced or something? Yeah, I don't know. And where does that take place? Because it must be in here. So these we think we have moved. Okay, avatar. I wonder if moving that relative is bad. So this says, so this is the organization picker. This is the little drop down that appears. So it's position absolute 100. So it knows that it needs its parent somewhere to be relative. Right. So this is what's missing. This admin account navbar item only becomes relative after 600 pixels. So that's the thing. So suddenly there's a parent container higher that's relative. So that's why this one I've just added somewhere. Why did I add that? Yeah, that shouldn't be relative. I see, because admin account navbar item should only kick in. But what that means is it needs something further up the chain to be position relative, and that is something here. So if I refresh this, it doesn't work because it expects this. So was this one was position relative. So does it now expect this one? And that's why there's a content container. Boom. Okay, fine. That doesn't kick in anymore. Why doesn't that kick in at 600 anymore? Oh, it does. This is just my zoom level. Must have really zoomed in. So here, 100%. I used to show you in here what the width you were scrolling at was. I wonder if that got removed for performance issues. Can you put it back? Do measure. Yeah, I can't remember. There used to be like a little as you scrolled, it used to tell you the width that you were scrolling to. I don't think that happens anywhere, or I'm missing it. So anyway, this now works because below 600, it is a full width menu, and up here it is a toggle menu. So we actually don't want these to stretch at all. So this is not, what are these called? Content items. So I think, what happens if this is 0? Right, we only want that one to grow specifically. So again, this is another argument for utility-based things. I could put grow on one and not on the other ones. So this one here, we want like a Yeah, I can see Tailwind users being like, ah, well, you're just defining a class that just does a CSS thing. Like, you could just write that in a style. Actually, you could just write it in a style element. So this one we want to grow. Which one was it? The logo one. Yeah. This one. Oh, no, wait. Maybe it's that I have... Oh, wait, hang on. I think I've screwed that up. Maybe it's because... Oh, I've forgotten. I've renamed all of the prefixes elsewhere and not here. That might be why this wasn't working. Uh-oh. Potentially none of this is going to work now. Sorry, I've totally cocked that up by not renaming the classes. Oh, phew. See, that's the upside of keeping the naming, that the BEM syntax works because they had the same prefix, because they had the same suffixes and prefixes and stuff. Okay, so I think what I was trying to do there was make it so the logo one had flex grow 1. But I took out the flex grow 1 from the defaults. So are these site navbar content items? I don't know about content items. So why are these growing? That has not refreshed. Has my server crapped out because I broke all those names? Let's just refresh that. I don't think that should have flex grow. What? Avatar icon. Site navbar content item. Site nav. Oh, I haven't saved it. Cool. Okay, cool. So then they can have padding on, and they will always collapse to the bottom right. So what happens if I'm not signed in? Boom, same thing. Okay, great. But we can then constrain the width. Okay, right. That was an incredibly long and circuitous path to say that we now have one navbar, which when you're not signed in, will put the logo on the left, and then sign up and sign in over here on the right-hand side. Is this constrained? Did we constrain the width on the other one in any way? Because we could sort of say... Oh, we haven't got any... Oh, maybe we have from Primer. Can't remember any of its variables. I don't know. They used to be like 11.8 a bunch, didn't they? I'm assuming there's like a constrained width in... Okay, so that width is now constrained in the middle there. Get rid of the box shadow. The constrained width would go on the one below, wouldn't it? Because the navbar is the thing that has the shadow. The content container is the thing that you would constrain. That's why another reason why there's a content container versus the raw white box that gets shown. Cool. So content is constrained here. We'll zoom in again. All right, so here you can then go to a user profile, but here you can, it doesn't work. So here you can then go to either admin area. And in the admin area, we want to swap out. Just going to go all the way to the end, just as an example here. We haven't done any commits or anything, so this is all nonsense. But in the admin area, we no longer need this. We no longer need this at all. Because let's take it out. So this should now use the default site header. And alternatively, what it does is it doesn't nothing. So okay, well we'll do that. So they both have to define a header, but this just uses the same header. This is the same header. You can go to a user account, you can go to any of your admin accounts, and you can go to the home page, all from the same header now. And what we've done is ended up with two avatars side by side. So we could give them some padding, right? Like we could go in and say that the content, I'm in totally the wrong place. The content items by default could have like some padding. Okay, like, I don't know. Cool. And lines between them and all of that fun stuff. This then sticks around when you go into these new places that we've been designing. So you can jump from where you are to, I've broken the toggle on that by putting that background in, but let's not dwell on that. That would be a bug that we just have to fix. So again, we've trying to change that behavior. Now you're in this sign up flow, but you can jump out of it. Maybe you hide the nav bar here, or maybe you want to have some sort of override where you deliberately pass in, you know, do not show any menus on this page or something like that. But what we've done is added the ability to basically totally remove these three files. This admin navbar component can go away altogether because we now have one thing that's smart enough to know whether there should be an admin or not. So let's go to one where we are signed in, but so here let's create a user, but we don't have any organization memberships. So we can go here, just close this, make this a bit bigger to read. And we can just be like test no orgs at admin.com or whatever. Make a user account for this. Great. So now we have this T, but there is no other avatar, and that's because our view component knows not to render that out because the user has no organizations. As soon as we added an organization for it, it would then show the organization picker correctly, which it won't do on this page because it has that stupid cover image, but here it would show the picker, and we would fix that showing all over the place. Don't know whether that's better, don't know whether it's worse, don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we've got one less component in the world. Now, let's go back with all of those changes I just made and checked it. I'm assuming we broke all of the tests for that because we just went around randomly swapping out arguments for things. So I'm assuming we've broken this because it's now passing an argument that no longer exists. Yep. User avatar character got taken away altogether. So we can go into that test. And look for that here. This no longer gets passed through. So this should hopefully now pass. Which it does. The other thing that we said we were going to do, this is the last thing we're going to do today, is swap this test out as well. Because what this test is doing is saying, I am specifying the behavior of my child component. When in fact, that's not what we want it to do. So here, it is this one here, avatar icon component. So does avatar icon component have any tests? No, but I think it should do. Let's do that. So we're not going to commit anything. We're just going, or totally road. So God knows how we're going to come back and rebase all this stuff and get it committed, but whatever. So avatar icon component. And we're going to find... Yeah. Do that. This is going to be subject just because I can't be bothered to remember what it is. And what does avatar icon component take? Can I just close everything else down apart from those two? Close others. I want that, and I want the actual Ruby class, this one. Avatar character. I don't think I sort of want to just... don't think that's quite what I want to test. So these are both required. So it... Oh, wait, maybe I am wrong then. So this... Oh, hang on a second. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm saying the wrong thing wrong all the way through, because I've been saying that this doesn't test what we want. But that component doesn't do anything. It just passes that character through. And so the test that we have for the navbar component is testing the capital Z. So, right. So this one doesn't need a test because it doesn't do any logic. It just spits out the things it's given. Okay, fine. So I'm happy with that one not to have tests because there's no logic. You just pass it the thing and it renders the thing. There's no point in testing that because if it doesn't do that, then it's not trying to work out what to render it. All it does is render it. But what the issue here we have is that the test is checking that... Oh, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe this is fine then. So the test for this one is that Z comes out, capital Z comes out. And the idea here is that we don't want to test the behavior of the component that we're using, but the component is just rendering the text. So maybe that's fine. Actually, yeah, so I had said we were going to come and update that test, but actually... You could adjust this to be like this test and just check that it had received the right attributes. Which then I guess would protect you if you do start making that component more logic, but I don't think we need to go through that now. Okay, so all of our tests work? Like, how much have I broken things today? I don't know if the last time I ran all the entire test suite, probably never. Just because we haven't been doing any Git hygiene or actually trying to get anything onto master. So we do have a CI for this, but it never runs because I've never actually bothered to go back and tidy everything up and get it onto master or into a PR or anything. All right, so that's cool because we swapped that out. Yes, I know why that one's broken. This one is broken, but that is... and this one we can fix now, actually, because that one actually is the... we changed the component, but didn't change the spec. Okay, so this one, we don't expect it to have this. But I don't think its tests rely on that, so... Do we have only failures set up on this? Yes. Okay, great. Cool. So organizations controller spec, we actually totally changed. I would new. I think I just... That should be create, right? Okay, cool. And it actually it redirects you somewhere. It doesn't just return you a 201, so that should... Yeah, that test was just like, hey, initially we had a test and then I stopped keeping it up to date as we went through, but now it just that should actually be we should actually test where that goes to, because that is something the controller is responsible for. Why is that not working? Opening the file. Organizations controller. It goes to this. To redirect to... And what I've actually done in the past here, because you don't know that slug yet, is to... This be like test. Something like that. Does that work? Oh shit, no, that should be the wrong one. Sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place, but I just want to get a passing test suite before I sign off for the day. Hang on a second. Oh, that does pass. Okay. That's flaky because I've set that slug based on that name, which isn't great, because that's going to fail that's going to fail in like a multitude of ways. You could just check that it was a redirect. You could match the path as a regex, which is never great. Yeah, there's probably, if anyone has any other better ways to do that, there's like a few different options, but none of them are great and none of them are going to be super quick, but it passes now, so I'm just going to let that one go. All right, that has been a lot. We've been going for, oh my God, we've been going for so long. I was having a good time. These usually last like an hour. All right, what did we do? What did we cover? So I ran you through the rebuild of this that I actually did offline last week. So we had a version where we had side-by-side images, and then I didn't like it for various reasons. And then I designed a little version where it could be constrained within a little box. Didn't like that one either. And then my favorite one is the one where you have this big giant background image, and you can... we built it in CSS. I built it off stream, but you can in CSS toggle the blurriness, and you can toggle how dark it is in CSS. And we covered how to do that, and we also covered how you could pass those in to the view component and set CSS variables on the style attributes within your view component, and then you could have something where your server side code controlled actually the background image there, and that would be super cool. And so there's a rough version of that. Then what I wanted to focus on was this header, site nav. And we had this idea where it's blank at the moment, and we had two. We had one that was for admins and one that was for people that weren't admins that were signed in, and it also handled non-sign-in users. So we then combined those two in a very non-well thought out process, just sort of winged it the whole way through. We had admin navbar component, super handy naming, and then we had admin navbar account navbar item component, and that has stuck around. That's the little account toggle thing. We want to rename that, but it stuck around. This one is no longer being used anywhere. I think these could get removed, and instead we transferred the behavior of that over to site nav. It's not within admin. It's just site nav navbar component. And so this one is now got some logic in it. So it knows whether there's a user, and then oh shit, that's the wrong way around. That should be in there. Just spotted that the list item should only get rendered out if the admin is going to, if the organization menu is going to show. So this is, if there's a user, show them this little avatar that represents their name, them. Cool. And if they have any organizations, or any organization memberships, then show the little picker for them. And we can work out what again, that's the one that stuck around in the admin area, but that could actually get refactored pretty heavily to know what to do if it doesn't have a default current organization one, which we hard coded for now. And so that one really needs some work. There's then the end of that first conditional, which is, well, if you don't have a user, show sign up or sign in. And all of that is tested. So while it isn't the neatest thing in the world, it is at least tested. So you could come through and go to site nav navbar spec and expect to see. Oh, I tell you what's not here is it should say it contains a sign up link. And there should be like expects page to have text. I've already forgotten what it should say. We need to add a sign out link as well somewhere. Just destroy my cookies to see it. Sign up. And here we should also have, I'm not testing, this should also be testing that they're a link, but I'm just not going to worry about that too much. So let's go back to our tests for this. Are they somewhere in here recently? Site nav navbar spec. Oh no, these are not two, but they should actually have. Sorry. And doesn't display email address. That should go because that's a useless test. That doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Okay, great. So this is at least tested, even if it's not ideal, and it tests that the components show or don't show. That is our recap. That is it for today. Thank you so much to people who dropped past the chat. I super appreciate it. It's our 2-year anniversary, I guess, of some sort. So thank you to people that have dropped by. Apologies for the person who mentioned in Twitch that the title is wrong. There's a bug somewhere. I will try and get that checked each time we start a new Twitch stream. There's some issue in Streamlabs that prevent that from changing. But you can view everything on the Sunday Club YouTube channel. There's a whole archive there of 2 years worth of this kind of rambling. Have wonderful weeks, everybody. And I will see you 10:30 a.m. next Sunday, same place. Have a great week.